Today is October 8th of 2022, which means that exactly 1 year ago, on October 8th of 2021, Metroid Dread, also known as Metroid 5, finally released to the world. For all of us diehard Metroid fans that have been waiting and waiting for years, and in some cases decades, for a brand new Metroid game to take us forward in the timeline, this day was a long time coming, and it felt absolutely euphoric to finally see this happen. Of course, my fanship of Metroid as a franchise and Samus as a character, and my journey through the announcement and reveal and then eventual playing of Metroid Dread is all very well documented. I definitely kind of have made a name for myself as a huge Metroid fan on YouTube and on the internet, and I'm very proud of that because it really is a video game franchise and a character that means so much to me. So there's something really cool about taking something that's your genuine fanship and that does mean that much to you, and weirdly turning it into something that becomes sort of your personality online. It's not my personality in real life, but I've been able to kind of make my sort of stamp in the YouTube gaming internet space in such a way that I'm known as being a Metroid fan. And I love that. I'm very proud of that fact because it just further feeds my love of the Metroid series. And so because of that, I thought it would be fun and important for me as a fan of Metroid and a fan of Metroid Dread to discuss and celebrate the 1 year anniversary of this game because it represents a huge positive step forward for a franchise that is known for extremely high quality, but also has really lacked in terms of love and attention from Nintendo for the past, 10 or so years. And so the release of this game 1 year ago just holds a very special place in my heart, and I know it's going to be the same for you guys as Metroid fans and Nintendo fans, and hopefully just game fans. I mean, the quality of Metroid as a franchise and the quality of Metroid Dread to me is so high that it should transcend just being a Metroid fan. If you're a game fan, the majority of folks should find Metroid Dread, I would think, to be objectively a really excellent game. I think it checks almost all of the necessary boxes to be seen as a good game. Obviously, not everyone loves every game, and not everyone loves every genre, so I'm not saying everyone should love it. But I think by and large, the video game community and fan base should see Metroid Dread as a great game. And for the most part, that's definitely true. We can tell by the strong sales of the game and, of course, the positive reception. The Game Awards even nominated it for Game of the Year, and it even won Best Action Game of the Year. So clearly, Metroid Dread really helped push the bounds and open up the sort of barrier for entry for the Metroid franchise in a really positive way, and I think it's one of the strongest parts of Metroid Dread's legacy. So I already discussed the 1 year anniversary of the reveal of Metroid Dread, which was back on June 15th of this year, because it was June 15th last year, 2021, that the game was revealed during Nintendo's E3 showcase. And it's like one of the few times in my almost 9 years on YouTube that I actually happened to capture a reaction of a Nintendo Direct and of a reveal trailer, and the fact that I even captured my reaction to that trailer is just such a crazy coincidence because, again, I don't live stream. I don't really like film reactions to things very often. I've done it a few times, mostly for E3s, and so by chance I managed to make it work for that E3, and by chance a brand new Metroid game was revealed, and so it's really kind of cool, when I think back at my time on YouTube, that was a reveal trailer that I happened to film myself watching. That was not planned. Now, I did suspect a new 2D Metroid was going to be revealed sometime soon. I thought there was a chance it would show up at E3. I had heard that a new 2D Metroid game was being made, but it was not a guarantee for E3, even though I suspected it. And I definitely had no idea that it was going to be Metroid 5 or the revived concept of Metroid Dread. So that whole time was just such a wonderful thing, and I have incredible memories of that time period between the reveal of Metroid Dread and then the release of the game, because there was so much stuff for me as a Metroid superfan and somebody who knows and loves the lore of the franchise and Samus as a character to cover and discuss and dissect and theorize about leading up to it, so much so that, and I know I talked about this a lot at the time, so I'm not going to bring it up in this video again other than to say I was even able to predict the big twist and the ending to that game based on nothing than my knowledge and love of the franchise. And so I was really proud of the fact that I was able to kind of see where it was going, and I think the way they handled it in the game was incredible. And so, you know, it's been almost 9 years for me here on YouTube, and what is that? I think 4 months from June to October. That 4-month window from Dread's reveal to release, easily and without question, my favorite 4 months I've ever spent being a YouTuber. In fact, so much so that in some ways, doing YouTube since Metroid Dread's reveal and then release, and my review videos that I made on the game, YouTube actually hasn't even felt the same for me. I feel like I was at such a high and so invested in making videos and discussing this game and this franchise that I love so much that, you know, the majority of my approach to YouTube after that time has subsided. It's been great and fun, and I've still seen some success and growth and strong views for the size of my channel, but it hasn't felt the same to me just, you know, in here, as cheesy as that sounds, in my heart. Boo-hoo. You know, it hasn't quite felt the same. So, anyway, no need to talk about YouTube. We're really just talking about Metroid Dread here, right? And so I want to discuss the game and its legacy and its impact and what it did for itself that was good and what it maybe means for the future of Metroid. First and foremost, when I think of Metroid Dread's legacy, I just think of the fact that it's a great game. That's the number one thing it had to be. More than anything else was just a good video game product. And it's a great video game product. It's a fantastic platforming, Metroid, backtracking adventure. It added a lot to Samus, it added a lot to the story and the lore of the series, and the fact that Metroid Dread also is, again, Metroid 5, is incredibly important, and a lot of us discussed it back in the day when it was announced, and I want to reiterate it here. It can't be understated how important it is to finally have a game that takes place after Metroid Fusion. We all know it was a 19-year gap from Metroid Fusion's release in 2002 to Metroid Dread's release in 2021. That 19 years represented almost 2 decades worth of wondering what happened after the adventure of Metroid Fusion. Because between all of the numbered 2D side-scrolling Metroid games and all of the Metroid Prime games and Metroid Other M and all of these other games, you know, Hunters and Federation Force, Fusion had always been the furthest in the actual timeline the story had gone. And so, at least speaking for myself as a Metroid fan who understood the timeline throughout all of these years, I always wondered what happened after Fusion, after Metroid found herself on the BSL, fighting the X-Parasite and the SAX entity. What happened after that? And I never really thought or knew if we would find out what happened after that. Even Metroid Other M coming out in 2010, which, as you guys know, I am a staunch fan and defender of Metroid Other M. It's got some flaws, but man, it's a great game, and I will always stand by that. But that game itself still took place right before Metroid Fusion, so it still didn't allow us to step beyond the events of the X-Parasite. And so when Metroid Dread was confirmed to be Metroid 5, and when Metroid 5 was confirmed to be Dread, it was just hugely important to find out what happened next. And I think that the story and the continuation of Samus and the X-Parasite and the Chozo is so well done in Metroid Dread. On top of just being a fun game with great gameplay, an interesting story, and a lot of variety to the worlds and items that you acquire throughout the game, it's a fantastic journey. I think the other important part to the game's legacy is the fact that the game is Metroid Dread, right? I learned after the game was revealed and they confirmed that it's called Metroid Dread that there was a surprising and disappointing amount of people who didn't even know what Metroid Dread was. In hindsight, it makes sense, but at the time, I just thought it was obvious that to see the Metroid Dread name and concept revive, 15 years after it was rumored to be a game that they were making at the end of the 2000s, I thought it was obvious to most people, and especially to Nintendo fans, that Metroid Dread was something that was supposed to release 10 years prior, 15 years prior, and that it never did, and it mysteriously disappeared, and it was teased in Metroid Prime 3, but we never saw it. And so to see a game called Metroid Dread come out and be the direct sequel to Metroid Fusion was so huge and mind-blowing. And I was like, whoa, a lot of people don't understand the legacy of the Metroid Dread title and of the development and cancellation of that game. And so it was really exciting to see people learn about what the Metroid Dread name meant and I got to make a lot of videos myself kind of talking about it, and people got to learn more about it. Many people did know it and understood why the name Metroid Dread was a huge reveal for this title, but so many people didn't, and I really enjoyed watching the internet discover what Metroid Dread actually meant, because it was so cool to know that Nintendo had never completely buried that concept and buried that idea. And as Sakamoto explained, once, I guess the technology, as he described it, once the ability to make the Dread concept work with the Emmy robots, with modern technology and the power of the Nintendo Switch and all these things, the fact that Nintendo was able to say, now it's finally time to resurrect Metroid Dread. You know, Mercury Steam did an incredible job remaking Metroid 2 as Samus Returns on the 3DS, so they were immediately handed Metroid 5. They took the dead and buried Metroid Dread concept, they dug it up from the earth, they handed it to Mercury Steam. A couple of years later, we get Metroid Dread as a real game, and it delivered on the promise, at least for me, and I think for most Metroid fans. It delivered, and man, as somebody following the franchise since the original game on the NES, and since it became my favorite franchise after playing Metroid Prime in 2002, I couldn't have been happier with the result, man. It's such a wonderful thing to see happen. It's one of those amazing stories in gaming that just doesn't happen very often, and it's just wonderful that it played out the way it did. Another important part to the legacy of Metroid Dread is just its commercial success. This game is the most successful and highest selling Metroid game of all time. Despite the series' high quality, we all know it's never been the biggest seller. Its best games only sell in the 1 to 2 million range. Plenty of them have sold less than 1 million. So it's a big deal to have this game come out and sell 3 million copies just within its first year, and who even knows how high it is? It could be 3.2, 3.3 million. I mean, we don't really know. We just know it's at that 3 million benchmark. And that surpassed Metroid Prime as the best-selling Metroid game ever. Whether it's the Switch effect, whether it's the quality of Metroid Dread, whether it's just people's curiosity, it's really opened the door for the future of Metroid, and it showed that this series is finally in a growth period. And it's only aided by the fact that Metroid Prime 4 is mysteriously being worked on behind the scenes as well, so we already know Metroid Dread, as the most successful Metroid game of all time, is going to be the perfect tee-up to another Metroid game that we know is also being made. We couldn't ask for a better renaissance period for the Metroid franchise, especially in the HD era, because Dread also represents the first HD Metroid game. I mean, there's so many firsts and so many bests that Metroid Dread achieved that it just can't be understated when it comes to why this game's legacy is important and why it matters. It's still not my favorite Metroid game. That's Metroid Prime, which is my favorite game ever made. And I don't even know if it's my favorite 2D Metroid game. I still think that might be Zero Mission. So I find Metroid Dread kind of battling with Super Metroid as far as which game I personally prefer. And lastly, I just need to touch on the story element of Metroid Dread and why I think that's also so important. This game, for the first time ever, as you guys know, I was very excited for this and I was asking for this for so long. This game finally put the Chozo and even living Chozo characters at the forefront of the story. And I've often said the Metroid series to me has never really been known so much for its story as it is for its lore. I found it to be more of a lore-based series, not a story-based series, even though there is a sequence of events and there are elements of Samus's past and character that we have seen play out. Metroid Other M is a great example, and I know people hate and want to cry and whine about it. And again, there are mistakes with it, but I also love the fact that they put Samus as a character and a human and a woman at the forefront of that story. And I liked that story. I liked that version of Samus that I saw. Even though people hated the fact that she was actually human on the inside, I actually liked that. I thought it was a bold, brave attempt, and while not everything worked, I think most things did. So that's an example of how we have seen glimpses into a more character and story-focused Metroid franchise in the past, and I think Metroid Dread added to that by having her confront her past as somebody raised by the Chozo and having her meet a living Chozo. And also, hello, spoiler alert for the big twist, she meets who is essentially her father in Ravenbeak. That was such a huge reveal. And so we meet a good Chozo from the Thoha tribe, and we meet a bad Chozo from the Makin tribe, and all of these elements that are introduced, and understanding how Ravenbeak was integral to the DNA that basically saved Samus's life as a kid, and and helped her become who she is, and that he basically is her father and she's basically his daughter. And also wrapping in the continuation of the X-Parasite as a threat to the galaxy, and maybe even a good entity by the end. That's still kind of mysterious. These are huge things that push forward the narrative side of the Metroid franchise and of Samus's journey. And I think it was so well handled, very fascinating, and I cannot wait to see where Nintendo takes the Metroid story and Samus's character after the events introduced in Metroid Dread. And so this is all for me to say that I think what Metroid Dread did for the Metroid franchise and for Samus is so fantastic. It made it the most commercially successful, it reviewed very well, it pleased the fans, it moved forward the story, it added to Samus's character, it delivered on events of all 5 of the Metroid numbered games and of Metroid Other M's. I don't care what you haters out there say. This is a continuation of the Metroid numbered games and of Metroid Other M as well. And it sets up Metroid Prime 4. You know, narratively, probably not. More than likely, Metroid Prime 4 will still take place before this game. But it sets it up as a successful and exciting release in the Metroid franchise, which would only be aided if my random predictions of Metroid Prime 4 releasing on the next-gen console also happens as well. This is an amazing renaissance and an amazing transitional period for Metroid, and it's because of Metroid Dread, which released 1 year ago today, to just massive fanfare and to amazing critical success and amazing sales and commercial success. And so it's a great time to be a Metroid fan because of Metroid Dread's reveal and existence and quality. And so that's how I feel about Metroid Dread personally as a Metroid super fan. And I loved playing it a year ago, and I've loved playing it the past few weeks. The game is now officially 1 year old, so happy birthday to Metroid 5, also known as Metroid Dread. And so talk about your experiences with the reveal of the game and playing the game and where you think it means Metroid will go going forward. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. Thanks, of course, for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you guys sometime in the future. Bye-bye.